was frustrating because I literally every day I was fighting writers, directors, not directors, I'm sorry, network, sometimes fellow actor.
Malcolm-Jamal Warner once revealed in an old interview. The words were brief, but like a curtain pulled back, they offered a glimpse behind the gentle smile of young Theo Huxtable, a glimpse into the pressures and conflicts the public rarely sees. Television star Malcolm-Jamal Warner. The beloved Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show passed away at the age of 54 in a drowning accident. The world was shocked and mourned, but behind the spotlight and the smile that once defined a symbol of American television, Warner also carried quiet sorrows. One can imagine that in those final moments he looked back on his 4-decade-long career, a journey filled not only with rousing applause, but also names etched deep like wounds that never healed. They were colleagues who hurt him, relationships marked by tension and conflicts that could never be mended. 7 names. 7 stories, each a lost opportunity, each a costly lesson in both career and trust. The question is, who were they? And why did Warner admit he simply couldn't work with them? Don't miss out. Follow the channel now to uncover the full truth behind the scenes. Eddie Griffin. When laughter hides the storm beneath. When The Cosby Show ended in 1992, Malcolm-Jamal Warner had already become a familiar face in every American household. But the pressure to establish a new identity pushed him quickly into another sitcom project. In 1996, Malcolm and Eddie premiered on UPN, marking an unexpected pairing between Malcolm and comedian Eddie Griffin. On screen, they portrayed 2 contrasting young men. Malcolm was serious and rigid. Eddie was carefree and impulsive. The show ran for 4 seasons, totaling 89 episodes, just shy of the 100 episode benchmark required for long-term syndication, a fact many found regrettable. Yet few viewers knew that behind the roaring laughter were months of tension, where Malcolm and Eddie often found each other unbearable off-screen. During those years, Malcolm represented the Cosby school of thought, discipline, family values, and positive messaging. Eddie Griffin, on the other hand, was a street-born comedian channeling the raw energy of Richard Pryor. Their styles clashed like fire and water. Malcolm frequently voiced concerns about the script quality, asking the writers to make adjustments suitable for family audiences. Meanwhile, Eddie often added wild, irreverent jokes, some seen as crossing the line. The set was often a boiling pot of friction. There were weeks when arguments grew so heated that production was halted, and producers had to step in to mediate. Interestingly, despite their differences, Malcolm and Eddie maintained a ritual before each taping. They would hold hands and pray. They relied on their shared faith and sense of duty to keep the work intact. On TV, audiences saw a dynamic duo with perfect comedic chemistry, unaware of the silent rift behind the scenes. In fact, many fans believed that it was precisely their contrasting personalities that gave Malcolm and Eddie its charm. But over time, the bottled-up fatigue took its toll. When the show ended at 89 episodes, rumors spread that it wasn't just about business decisions. Some speculated that the network chose to end an artistic partnership already riddled with cracks. Malcolm later spoke candidly about that period. "We didn't get along at all off camera, but once the lights came on, the show had to go on." That statement painted a picture of a young actor struggling to uphold professionalism while navigating internal conflict. Eddie Griffin, in retrospect, viewed the situation more lightly. He admitted that both were too young, too different to find common ground. Notably, over the years, their relationship healed. Years after the series ended, Malcolm and Eddie reunited at an event, embraced tightly, and laughed about their fiery past. The story ended with forgiveness and a delayed camaraderie. Seen from another angle, this incident reflects the darker side of the television industry. What audiences perceive as humor and chemistry can often mask commercial pressure, creative clashes, and personal conflict behind the camera. Malcolm learned that professionalism isn't just about performing, but also about endurance, patience, and the will to cooperate even when you can't stand your co-star. Still, some wonder, had the two found common ground earlier, could Malcolm and Eddie have surpassed 100 episodes and become the next iconic black sitcom after The Cosby Show? Those unanswered questions linger in the memories of fans. But from the experience with Eddie Griffin, Malcolm emerged wiser, with lessons on ego collisions, the strength of prayer and responsibility, and the lasting value of forgiveness. And when it comes to behind-the-scenes tension, it's hard to forget another figure who stood beside Malcolm from a young age, Carl Anthony Payne, Coon, the on-screen best friend who became a distant presence in real life. What happened between them that turned a screen friendship on The Cosby Show into a cold, real-life silence? Carl Anthony Payne. 2. When on-screen friendship becomes distance to audiences. Theo Huxtable and his buddy Cockroach were a tight-knit, cheerful and funny duo on The Cosby Show. But behind the screen, the story was far more complicated. In 1984, when the show's producers were casting roles, Carl Anthony Payne II was a strong contender for the part of Theo. After several rounds of auditions, the final decision went to 14-year-old Malcolm-Jamal Warner from New Jersey. Carl accepted the supporting role of Walter Cockroach Bradley, Theo's best friend. While this seemed like a logical arrangement for the script in reality, it marked the beginning of subtle tensions between two teenage boys still growing into themselves. Throughout 4 seasons, Cockroach appeared in key moments and helped bring laughter to millions of American households. However, Malcolm later admitted that he and Carl didn't really get along off-screen. Differences in expectations and screen time likely made it hard for them to find common ground. Some sources claim that Carl grew frustrated with his reduced role and tensions peaked when he refused to change his appearance to meet a script requirement, leading to the sudden disappearance of Cockroach after season 4. While the details remain open to interpretation, the result was undeniable. The beloved on-screen duo became an unfinished memory. For Malcolm, this was a particularly awkward experience. On one hand, he had to portray a close friendship with Carl, sharing laughs and camaraderie in front of the camera. On the other, he felt a subtle but persistent tension on set. As a teenager lacking the tools to navigate such situations, Malcolm chose silence and distance. Each scene became a psychological balancing act, performing his role as an actor while masking the discomfort he felt inside. In hindsight, it wasn't just a falling out with a co-star, it was a lesson in the loneliness that can come with early success. Time eventually brought both actors maturity. Years later, Malcolm shared that his relationship with Carl had softened. They were able to shake hands and converse without the weight of old grudges. Viewed from a broader perspective, their story reflects the unique pressures of the entertainment industry. Young talents thrust into an environment of competition comparisons and the fear of being left behind. In many ways, the rift between Malcolm and Carl wasn't purely personal. It was a small-scale image of the ruthless dynamics behind the scenes where every moment is measured and scrutinized. Had they received more support back then? Or had youthful egos been less sensitive? Would the outcome have been different? Perhaps we'll never know. But this story offers a sobering reflection. Success in television isn't just about talent, it also demands emotional intelligence and the ability to connect. And because Malcolm endured those silent wounds, he was more prepared to face an even greater shock later in life, the fall from grace of the mentor he once revered most, Bill Cosby. A blow that wasn't just personal but social in scope, one that would reshape Malcolm's entire understanding of trust and disappointment. Bill Cosby, the mentor who fell from grace and left a tainted legacy. If Eddie Griffin and Carl Anthony Payne II represented professional conflicts that came and went, the story of Bill Cosby is something entirely different, complex, deeply personal, and permanently etched into the life of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. To Malcolm, Cosby was not just a mentor who launched his career, he was a father figure, the TV dad who shaped his entire adolescence. For 8 years, 1984-1992. From the age of 14 into adulthood, Malcolm grew up under Cosby's guidance, witnessing The Cosby Show become a cultural phenomenon, drawing over 30 million viewers weekly and turning the Huxtable family into a beloved American icon. At that time, no one had more influence on Malcolm than Bill Cosby. But that's exactly why Cosby's downfall after dozens of sexual assault allegations left such a deep emotional scar. In 2018, Cosby was convicted, only for the verdict to be overturned in 2021 due to procedural issues. Regardless of the legal outcome, the flood of accusations and the public outcry ended his career. Malcolm admitted that hearing and reading the accusations caused excruciating pain. It wasn't just the fall of a hero, it was the collapse of a legacy in which his own identity and career had been so tightly interwoven. TV networks pulled The Cosby Show from circulation. Syndication royalties disappeared. Hopes for a reboot or reunion were permanently shelved. If not for all this, Malcolm once said with a hint of bitter humor, we all could have made a lot of money from a revival. Half joking, half heartbroken, his words reflected the disillusionment of someone whose youth was tied to a now shunned masterpiece. Malcolm's response to Cosby's scandal was marked by inner conflict. He couldn't deny the man's impact on his life, nor erase the fond memories of a show that once elevated black representation on television. At the same time, he could not condone or defend the alleged actions. "I can't excuse him, but I also can't fully turn my back on him," Malcolm said. That statement captures a profound emotional struggle: gratitude versus grief, reverence for the legacy versus heartbreak over the truth. Perhaps the tragedy for Malcolm is not only in the scandal itself, but in the painful realization that someone capable of immense social good was also capable of immense personal harm. More broadly, the Bill Cosby scandal wasn't just a personal reckoning for Malcolm-Jamal Warner, it was a cultural trauma for an entire community. The Cosby Show had once been a beacon of pride for Black America, paving the way for countless other family-centered shows featuring African-American casts. Cosby's fall forced viewers to ask, can artistic legacy be separated from personal misconduct? And how do those closely tied to that legacy like Malcolm navigate their own identities when the icon they once stood beside is now disgraced? There are no easy answers, only individual paths through collective grief. For Malcolm, that path seems to be one of nuanced silence, honoring the past, without endorsing the flaws, acknowledging disappointment, without indulging in condemnation. In the end, the Bill Cosby chapter in Malcolm-Jamal Warner's life remains both golden memory and long shadow, equal parts triumph and tragedy. Tracee Ellis Ross, a career cut. Short, a lingering regret. When Read Between the Lines premiered on BT in 2011, many viewers felt this could be the turning point that brought Malcolm-Jamal Warner back to the spotlight of American television. In the series, he played Dr. Alex Reed, a psychologist, while Tracee Ellis Ross portrayed his wife, Carla Reed, a sharp, witty college professor. Together, they embodied a modern, relatable Black family of intellect and warmth. Throughout its first season, the show garnered stable ratings, favorable reviews, and the on-screen chemistry between Warner and Ross was considered the soul of the series. Some critics even predicted the Reeds could become a new iconic TV couple, following in the footsteps of the Huxtables from The Cosby Show. But just as the show was gaining momentum, Tracee Ellis Ross abruptly announced her departure before the second season. Her exit came as a shock, especially since she had been positioned as a co-lead alongside Malcolm. With her gone, the script had to be rewritten. Carla's character was written off as having taken a job in another city, leaving Alex to juggle parenting and marriage long distance. Warner, who had hoped the series would be his next major mark following his youth success, was forced to carry the show on his own doubling as lead actor and producer. But the spark was gone. Read Between the Lines stalled and only resurfaced in 2015 on a different network, only to be quietly canceled soon after. The numbers told the story from promising long-term potential to a short-lived project with barely 2 seasons and a handful of episodes. For Malcolm, Tracee's exit wasn't just about losing a co-star. It was the emotional weight of having a creative partner suddenly step away, leaving him to shoulder a heavy responsibility alone. In rare interviews, he never blamed Tracee. He maintained his respect for her, but between the lines was an unmistakable melancholy. He once compared making a long-running series to building a family. When one key member leaves, the entire structure shakes. Read Between the Lines was Warner's attempt to reintroduce himself to audiences as a grown man, and Tracee was an irreplaceable part of that vision. Her absence didn't just alter the show, it left him wondering what could have been if they had faced the production challenges together. On a broader scale, the story reflects the harsh reality of television success, hinges not only on good scripts or acting talent, but also on personal decisions. Tracee had her reasons. New opportunities, career shifts, and stepping away from a project may well have been her way of preserving her artistic path. While Malcolm understood that being left behind in a promising but unfinished journey remained painful, it wasn't just losing a role that worked, it was a metaphor for how fragile professional alliances can be. From that experience, Malcolm likely learned a difficult truth: not all professional connections, no matter how strong, are meant to last. He held on to his respect for Tracee, but was forced to become more resilient, continuing the journey with one less anchor. And the lingering question remains: had Tracee stayed, could Read Between the Lines have become the next great Black family sitcom, or would it have still run into unavoidable obstacles? The wounds from this unfinished chapter made Malcolm more acutely aware of how fragile trust can be in the entertainment world, and that collaborations often only last for a single stretch of the road. But not all professional tensions end with bittersweet goodbyes. Some grow heavier with personal and creative clashes, making reconciliation near impossible. Such was the case with another co-star, someone who had once shared a relationship with Malcolm off-screen, but ended up leaving more distance than connection. Her name, Karen Malina White. Karen Malina White quiet clashes between love and work among Malcolm-Jamal Warner's longtime collaborators. Karen Malina White holds a unique place. She not only appeared on The Cosby Show as Charmaine Brown Pam's best friend, but later reunited with Warner on Malcolm and Eddie. Beyond their professional ties, the two shared a romantic relationship that lasted 7 years, a significant span for two actors who came up through television together. Their blend of professional camaraderie and personal affection seemed like a solid foundation that could sustain them both through the ups and downs of the industry. Yet when love and work walk hand in hand, the smallest friction can leave lasting marks, and in this case, those frictions became silent rifts. In the early days, Karen's presence offered Malcolm a sense of stability. After the massive success of The Cosby Show, he entered a period of professional uncertainty, trying to redefine his place in the industry. Karen was both a scene partner who understood the pressure and a personal support system. But as they worked side by side, cracks began to show. On Malcolm and Eddie, Karen joined as a supporting cast member, while Warner shouldered the central role and producer responsibilities. That level of responsibility made him more demanding on set, and sometimes that strictness spilled into his interactions with Karen. For her, those critiques could feel less like professional notes and more like personal pressure from a partner. No open conflicts ever broke out, but the silence between them gradually grew heavier. Eventually, their romantic relationship ended quietly. No tabloid drama, no public statements. Still, insiders acknowledged that blending love and work had made the set an emotionally fragile space. Scenes were filmed to completion, but beneath the surface lingered glances avoided and tension unspoken. For Warner, it may have been one of his most emotionally layered challenges, trying to preserve a romantic connection while remaining professionally focused, ultimately failing to sustain either. On a broader level, the story of Warner and Karen Malina White reflects a common challenge in the entertainment world, where the line between personal and professional life is razor thin. When two people are both lovers and co-workers, even small disagreements can become magnified. And when the relationship ends, the impact isn't just emotional, it directly affects their ability to work together. Their story serves as a reminder that closeness doesn't always translate into harmony. Sometimes it creates unseen pressures that make continued collaboration nearly impossible. Perhaps because of that, Warner grew more private in later years, less inclined to speak publicly about his personal life, and more careful to keep it separate from his professional environment. But one question still lingers for fans: had they drawn clearer boundaries between love and work, could Malcolm and Karen have become a couple that was not only captivating on screen, but also lasting off it? His experience with Karen Malina White remains a personal reminder in a career like his. The boundary between personal connection and professional discipline must be carefully protected. The production team of Malcolm and Eddie UPN. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner's clashes with Eddie Griffin stemmed from contrasting performance styles, then another key conflict in his career came from behind the scenes, specifically with the writing and production team of Malcolm and Eddie aired on the UPN network. When the series premiered in 1996, Warner stepped into the dual role of lead actor and co-producer. After the phenomenal success of The Cosby Show, he was driven by a desire to create a sitcom that would build upon that legacy, portraying positive multidimensional representations of Black life on television. On the other side, however, UPN, a fledgling network at the time, sought quick laughs, willing to rely on predictable formulas and broad humor to capture a mainstream audience. This clash of visions turned the Malcolm and Eddie set into a silent battleground. Warner admitted in an interview that he was constantly fighting with the writers, producers, and even the studio to preserve the show's creative direction. For him, a sitcom wasn't just about short-term laughs. It had to deliver messages, reflect values, and carry forward the impact The Cosby Show had on millions of American families. But in Hollywood, even a star's voice often isn't loud enough to override the bottom-line priorities of an entire production team. The result was a show that found moderate success, 4 seasons and 89 episodes, but stopped just short of the 100-episode milestone that would have qualified it for long-term syndication and steady revenue. For Warner, this was a bitter disappointment. He had come so close to creating a new cultural landmark, only to watch it fall short. He once remarked that the show's early termination and absence from rerun cycles were clear signs of what happens when artistic ideals collide with commercial realities. From multiple perspectives, it's hard to fault UPN, a small network at the time, for pursuing short-term profitability. Meanwhile, Warner placed his hopes in long-term cultural impact. But the creative disconnect made it difficult for him to work comfortably with the production team. Once again, the underlying lesson emerged: television is an industry where dreams must constantly negotiate with spreadsheets. And in that negotiation, the artist doesn't always win. Could Malcolm and Eddie have reached iconic status if Warner had compromised more? Or would that compromise have cost him the artistic integrity he so fiercely defended? That question still hangs in the air. Regina King, a broken love and an unspoken wound. Among the names that left the deepest emotional scars in Malcolm-Jamal Warner's life, Regina King holds a special place. She wasn't a co-star on screen, but she was a longtime friend who later became his short-lived partner. At the time, Regina King was already a celebrated actress transitioning from television to film and eventually earning an Oscar. Meanwhile, Malcolm, still searching for stability after The Cosby Show, thought he had found both a personal anchor and the chance to build a lasting family. They publicly began dating in 2011, and as two prominent black figures in the industry, many fans hoped for a happy ending. But on February 14, 2013, Valentine's Day, a moment usually tied to roses and promises, Warner chose to end the relationship. In an interview with tofab.com, Regina King recalled the shock of being left on such a symbolic day. She received a bouquet of flowers from Malcolm with a note that read, "I still love you, but that only deepened the pain. I threw those flowers in the trash," Regina said, "and when he got angry, all I could say was, 'Get out.'" While she never named Malcolm directly, the context and timing left little doubt about who she was referring to. For Malcolm, the real reason behind the breakup was never publicly shared. He chose silence, a response that reflected both discretion and perhaps a lingering sense of guilt. Perhaps he felt the relationship had run its course, or that professional pressure and diverging life paths had gradually pulled them apart. Still, choosing Valentine's Day to end a deep relationship left many questioning his sensitivity, revealing not just poor timing, but perhaps his own confusion in handling personal matters. On Regina's side, the disappointment was clear. Their long-standing friendship and deep trust were severely shaken. After the breakup, she tried to reassure the public with a composed message. Things happen in life, you move on, an effort to maintain her image and avoid reopening old wounds. But her tone still hinted at emotional bruises that hadn't fully healed. For Regina King, the end of her relationship with Malcolm didn't just mean losing a partner, but also a confidant she had once trusted completely. On a broader level, the story underscores the fragility of relationships in the entertainment world, where career pressure, media spotlight, and public expectations often make love even more precarious. It also reveals that even mature, successful individuals can struggle with how to maintain or end a relationship gracefully. One can't help but wonder, had Malcolm chosen a different approach, slower, gentler, might the pain have been less intense? For Warner, this experience didn't just leave regret. It solidified his later decision to lead a more private personal life. He began keeping his romantic relationships away from public view, limiting media exposure perhaps as a form of self-protection, not only for himself, but also for those close to him. Yet whether he likes it or not, Regina King's name has become part of the list of people he finds difficult to collaborate with, not due to professional conflict, but because the emotional wound runs too deep. And just as the loss of love still lingered, Warner would soon face another challenge: the difficult balancing act of artistic collaboration, where creative ideals often collide with commercial demands. That was the story behind his experience with the production team of Malcolm and Eddie, a project he poured his heart into only to see it end unfinished. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's journey stands as a testament to the fragile line between spotlight and shadow, between success and emotional scars. The 7 names mentioned are not merely former colleagues he found difficult to work with. They are mirrors reflecting different chapters of his life, where artistic ideals and personal love collided, leaving behind marks that aren't easily erased. Through each relationship, Malcolm experienced both loss and growth, ultimately choosing silence and gratitude for what remained. Perhaps that became his final philosophy: to forgive more, to resent less, and to live kindly with himself most of all. If you're drawn to the untold stories behind the spotlight, stay with us. Hit follow, share your thoughts, and leave a comment. Should an artist's legacy be measured by their on-screen success or by the lessons they leave behind from the battles no one sees? Don't miss our upcoming episodes where we continue to uncover the unseen side of the entertainment world.